over in Portland today?
The weather is gross, actually. It's raining. It has been
Same.
so beautiful, but today it's downpour.
It's the same here in Virginia today, and we've got like a week of it. So I don't know, but I had this, I had read or I had kept up, but like I guess it rains there a lot. Does it, or did I misunderstand that?
Yeah, no, it rains a lot. Not as much as Seattle. We're about, 3.5 hours south of Seattle. But is definitely very wet from like November through April.
Really? Snow?
Yeah. It depends. The last few years we've gotten a couple snowstorms, but growing up, no, not really.
It surprises me just by just being a northern state, right? But I guess the
Right.
Pacific keeps in, proximity to Canada and everything, all the northern. Does the temperature does it get cold?
It does get cold, but again, not really cold enough to snow and ice. It kind of oscillates between like, 40s and 50s in the winter. And then
Yeah.
you'll get some weird days of like 30. And then, in the summer, it's beautiful 80 degrees.
We run about our November, December it's like what you said. It can be 70s and 80s here. And then when you get into January, February, it gets cold. Like we'll be
Yeah.
in teens, we'll be down in the zeros, so it gets pretty wicked here. Just for that 2 months. If you just got a stomach for about 8, 9 weeks, and then you turn a corner and you're back to similar weather, 50s, 60s. And now we definitely get all the seasons here though.
Yeah.
A little bit of snow this past year. That's really cool, man. It seems like that's a really good climate though to like just live in. And because if you don't like cold, I'm not big on cold.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool because we don't have any of the natural disasters, right? No hurricanes, no tornadoes, no major snow and ice storms, no like deathly heat, like you could get in Arizona or whatever. So it's pretty like, a chill climate, but you got to be okay with a little gray rain. But I just always travel that time of
What
the
does
year.
that do for your mental health? Like on the gray, I've heard some people talk about that. How that kind of gets in your nugget a little bit, messes
Yeah.
with your vitamin D. How does that? What does that look like?
For me, I just make a point to travel that time of the year
Yeah,
to book. I try to stay here in the summer. May through October is beautiful and sunny, and then just try and book all the getaways, all the visiting people during the grow season. That's how I
that's
survive it.
cool.
I think most people have to definitely take some supplements to get through.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, it
there's
can
a
be a
term
little
for
rough.
that. There's a term. It's not hibernation, but there's another little thing, and I have a friend that she'll talk about it. If it gets too gray or too cold for so long, she'll call it. And there's a little bit of depression
Snowbird.
that comes with. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's something else. Like there's a little depression that comes with it. Do you have children, you guys?
Seasonal depression. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
one
there you
thing.
go. Seasonal depression. That's
Yeah.
exactly what. Yeah. Do you guys have kids?
I have one daughter. She's
Yeah.
11. She keeps us
Uh,
very busy.
Able to travel with you when you go, or is
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Most of the
cool.
time. Yeah.
It's really cool. Let me tell everyone who I'm talking to, and then I'm really excited. I want to learn more about this dump truck company. This is right up my alley.
Okay, great.
Today's guest is Karissa Dean, a dynamic personal development coach and entrepreneur who transformed her life from burnout and overwhelm to bold, authentic living. She's passionate about helping others break free from survival mode and embrace their full potential. Um, listen. I was reading up, and just like we always do, and folks, like it's been a minute since I took a little bit of time off, and I've rebranded as a Jeff Robertson Show and a couple other little things. But reading about, I do a lot of business coaching, a lot of entrepreneur coaching, and just reading your story, and that's what we do. So I'm excited to kind of get all of that out there for them to hear, because I think our best comeback stories are the folks that fell short and we figured it out. So, man, thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Jeff. I really appreciate it. I'm excited.
Yeah, what's a day in your life look like these days?
No 2 days are ever the same. I'll start by saying that. You know, I think a year ago, it was much more chaotic. I feel like I'm finally in a flow of how to organize my days a little better. As you know, in business, there's always something to do, and there's never quite enough time to get it all done. So I've worked really hard in the last year to work on those lists and the priorities, and really identify and give myself permission to be done, especially when my daughter gets home from school, really set down work. But every day is a little different. I usually have 2 to 3 days where I'm just meeting with coaching clients. There's usually a day or two where I'm doing, back end work with emails and scheduling and looking at government contracts, trying to secure the next thing. All the back end. How's my insurance? Am I compliant with DOT? Like, what's going on with my trucks? There's usually somebody broke down somewhere that I've got to, make sure somebody is on the way to rescue them. I've been known to be in trucks myself when you run out of drivers, which is never my favorite day, but it happens, especially on the weekend. But really, I'm kind of become a delegate master. So I've learned to let go, and that 80% of what I expect, if they can get 60 to 80%, they're doing it and it's off my plate, I just let it go. So working really hard to keep growing, keep building, but really trying to also get balance where it's necessary to be a more present, mom for my daughter. Really is kind of the main thing. She's 11 and they grow fast, and I've got maybe a couple more years where she wants to be with me. So I'm really kind of setting down a lot of stuff so that I'm really available for her, because I know that time is very limited.
I had someone, I was listening to a podcast one time, and I can't remember who it was, but they summed up their time with their kids. This is when it spoke to me, was how many spring breaks they had left. And I was like, and they said it, so I started like quick math in my head. I'm not a math guy, but I was like, oh gosh. Because my son's 15, so I have realistically 2 to 3, hopefully. And then my daughter's 13. It's the same. It's just really, when they told me that, it gave me a lot of perspective.
Yeah.
You said something too, where you've had to figure a lot of things out, and it takes me back. So walk us back. You weren't this well-oiled machine, and we mentioned trucks and dump trucks and all that cool stuff, which is has its own male-dominated stereotypes that come with it. And here comes Karissa, that's like, hey, I'm gonna figure this crap out. So there's a lot of things going on with you, and the one thing that really the one thing that caught my eye was where you said I was fed up with overwhelm.
Yeah.
How did you what took you into overwhelm?
I think, not to be the stereotypical, female feminist, but there's a dynamic with women that's changing, and it's also changing with men. And that dynamic is the roles within the home are shifting, as well as women are wanting to do things. And so 7 years ago, I was taking my daughter to kindergarten, and I was like, holy shit, now what? What do I do with my time? I was the primary parent up until that point, and I just had more space to consider what it is that I want to build and create. And so at the time, my husband then, he was in the construction industry, had a couple dump trucks, and he was like, well, this business, because we had worked together early on in our marriage. And so I understood the business, and he was like, well, maybe you should do this thing. And so I did. And I wouldn't say it fueled my soul, but it was something that I understood and I knew I could be successful at, because women are, I don't want to say they're not undervalued in the industry, but they're underrepresented in the industry as far as construction, heavy equipment operating, trucks hauling. And And so initially I started this business thinking, okay, I understand how to do it, right? I can do the logistics. But it was overwhelming because you are not always perceived to know what you know. And so you have to fight a little bit to prove that you're worthy of the contracts, and you have to jump through a few more hoops than maybe some of the other guys who have been around for a long time. Maybe their dad started the company, and so they're kind of grandfathered into a situation. And so the overwhelm for me was, I want to do something. I want to create something. I also want to be a present mother. And I also want to get to know who I am now that I have more time to, so it's, what is Karissa like? As you get older, your priorities change. And I think they change multiple times. And so it was just a period of, what am I doing with my life? What are the things that make me happy? What are the hobbies and activities? And so the overwhelm was trying to do it all and not understanding that you can't really do it all, and be 100% all the time in every single area, that you're going to drop balls, and it's okay to drop balls. It's just about the prioritization. So, being overwhelmed in a house, trying to cook, clean, do the laundry, make sure everyone's where they need to be, as well as start a business, figure out, am I doing it the right way? Do I have all the bonds and insurance in order that I need? Take your contractor's license test, take your CDL test. It's a lot. And for me, it was the catalyst that pushed me into personal development, because I needed a better mindset. I needed to think about all of it better than I was. And that's when I hired my first coach, and she really helped me identify where I was holding myself back just with limited thinking and being not very good at organizing and understanding what the priorities are,
Delegation is a big thing there. Well, what did you do before? Like, what was your career path up until entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So I got my degree in dance, and I danced semi-professionally up until I had my daughter. And then I was, kind of working alongside my husband in his business. And then we had started buying properties. So I got into property management. And then I was also teaching for Portland Public Schools and coaching dance team. And so I was just like everywhere, trying to be everything for everyone, trying to fulfill my passion, support my husband, do this like property management, which is kind of like, as you know, if you're an entrepreneur, like you got to have these multiple pathways, because you don't have the 401k, the security that you would get in working with a larger corporation. And so, I just, I was doing it all, and I had dabbled in opening and owning my own dance studio, and that failed. And so it was just, I feel like I was floundering. I still feel like I'm floundering, but I'm kind of that mindset of, I can do it. I can figure it out. It's just about aligning to your purpose and your passion, which is what I think I finally figured out, is where I'm supposed to be putting my energy, not all these things just because, I want to keep my partner happy, keep my kid happy, look at my future, and fulfill my passion. So I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yes, no, it's perfect. Because here's like the one thing out of all of those, and I've kind of lived like you have in a different way, right? But I'm not a good dancer. But here's what I would tell you is, and this is to speak to like our audience, is when you work for someone else, you get to be reactive. Rental property phone rings, hey, there's a leak. I'll fix the leak. When you dance, you know where you're supposed to be, all those things. And then when you start venturing out on your own, that you're the one that has to schedule. You're the booker. You're the thing. You're that driving force. You're the one that's got to get up. You're the boss. So there's a lot there that I think just coaching entrepreneurs, like we talked about, was I teach some startup stuff, and I'm like, listen, every day, if you hate your boss, I don't know if entrepreneurship's for you,
Yeah.
because you got to get up and look at yourself every day, and you got to deal with you. And if you don't want to, if you don't like being held accountable, you might want to think about where you're headed, because you're your own accountability, and it hurts, it stings, because you got places to be, and people,
Yeah.
you have to be the driving force. What failed the dance studio, you think?
I think I was young, and my understanding of entrepreneurship at that phase of life was more limited, and I thought more people would have my back. So I, had grown up dancing, knew a lot of people, coached a lot of kids, and I kind of just thought I had a bigger community in it. And it turns out that you shouldn't start a business because you think other people want to support you. You should start a business because it's the thing that you're meant to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You took me right where I was going to thought you
Yeah.
would take me, because I'm a fitness guy. Like, I worked, and the number of people that said, "Hey, we'll be there," only not to show up. When the key went in the door, the folks that said they were going to be there was like, I can't, this came up, or we're happy with Sally over here, and we don't want to leave where we're at. And I totally get it. And so that's part of like a little discovery process. I'll work with people and sometimes, like, who all have you talked to about starting your business? Oh, my friends and family. And I go, yeah, they're not going to spend any money with you. And
No.
they're like, what? And I go, my friends and family have, like, my close friends and family, immediate family. My mom has been to that, when I owned the gym, was in there one time in 6 years, 7 years that I operate, that we was in there. She came in one time, just to
Yep.
check the place out right as we were getting ready to exit. Um, so it's just you're
Crazy.
this customer, yes. But they're also the ones that they want you to feel good. They don't want you to hurt. They don't want all the things. They want to give you the yeses. They just want to love you, but they don't. When it comes to putting money in your pocket, it's a different story.
Yep.
That's
Exactly.
exactly what I thought you were going to say, Carissa. Because I've been there, man. I've been there. I had and I'll give you two examples. I had, when we saw it at the gym, we never ran a lunchtime class because we were a commute out of town, meaning everybody left our little outlying suburb and went into the city most for work. So the access to just people that were eating lunch where we're from was not that much. And then you're talking about an hour and trying to train people that, hey, you can fit this in. And we didn't have showers. I don't want to go back to work, steak, all that stuff. So someone came in, it's like, I got 15 people that would sign up today if you had a lunchtime class. I created a special link and said, here's your special link. Share that with your 15 friends. Once I get 10 of these signed up, we're gonna launch this class. Say, like, today's May, whatever. I'm like, hey, June 1st is gonna be our launch date. They didn't. Nobody
Yeah.
bought. When I put it back off on them, because that's what you have to have. You can't just build it and hope. You gotta have some commitment from everyone else. And then I had been asked to start another gym, a similar gym, and they were like, let's see. So I put out a poll, and the poll was well received. It's just nobody wanted to spend what we charged. They wanted that group training and with the coach and everything for Planet Fitness type pricing, and it
Right.
doesn't. When human labor is, and that's our sweet spot. So, yes, I know exactly what you mean with that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you learned, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting, I learned a lot in that failure. I lost a lot of money. I lost a lot of relationships, but I realized, that was like the moment where you realize it's on you, and either you're determined and resilient enough to make it happen or you're not. And in that moment, I wasn't, right? And I can look back at that now and be like, well, that's because that's not what I was supposed to do with my life, right? But
Yeah.
in the moment, it felt devastating, right? Because how could all these people not want to support me? And the thing that I realize now is they're just all afraid. Everyone's just afraid. And it's hard to take a risk on a new business. And I don't blame any of them for that. But I think what it did as an entrepreneur is it gave me the ability to shift my attention from, oh, I have this community of people and they're going to support me, to who outside of myself that I don't know yet is going to be my next best client and is going to be, the person who's going to help me build my next thing. And so it really, what it did is it gave me the confidence to expand my circle, to learn how to network differently and work on different kinds of relationships. And so it gave me this perspective on what it will take when I find the business that I'm supposed to be in. And that's kind of where I've landed with my coaching business, is this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And all the businesses I've had, all the failures I've had, and the successes, right? Like my property management business is a great success. My trucking company, I'd say, is somewhere in the middle. I'm not super passionate about it. I'd like to sell it. But it's not, I got to build it back up a little bit because I kind of let it die down. And so I think that it's all about trial and error. And, to your point, Jeff, when you said, if you don't like your boss, right, you're going to have a really hard time being an entrepreneur. That's the thing, is the sweet spot with coaching and helping people land in their purpose is you create this pathway for them where they are resilient and they're determined because they're really in their purpose and they're so passionate and they're like, just the blinders are on to all the nonsense and people don't believe you. I always tell people too, if you're an entrepreneur and you're talking to people who are not entrepreneurs, you are not going to get motivated about your business because they don't understand it. It's a very unique hat to be an entrepreneur. And it takes a lot of like, I'm scared as shit, but I'm going to do this anyways. And I think that's the thing that I always had was, well, I don't know how to do this, but I'm just going to do it anyways. And it seems really dumb and scary, but I'm just going to give it a go. What do I have to lose?
Either you're going to pay someone that's going to help you figure it out, or it's going to cost you money. And what I try to and tell people is you're emotionally, you're going to feel better paying somebody to help you figure it out versus dealing with the failure and having to pay it that route. It's just the way it is. Business is not life or death. I was a police officer. Police officers, like we approach things from a life or death standpoint.
Yeah.
Business is not like that. It's just gonna cost you some money,
Yep.
right? And I think when you can go like with yourself or work with you, or in your situation is finding someone who's been where you're trying to go, and lean on them to help shorten that gap. Regardless, you're either going to pay now or you're going to pay later if you're inexperienced. Is always been my example I use for people.
Definitely.
What so we had that, and then how did the dump truck business come along? Was that something that you bought, it was already established, or you're like, I know you told me about these things, but was it a business that was established, or did you have to build it from ground up?
I never wanted to do it, if I'm being completely honest with you. But I understood it, right? At the time I was married to somebody who was in that industry and in that world. And so it was kind of like, he was like, if you do this, it's an olive branch for me and it's really going to help our family. And it did. It helped us buy more properties that I was able to manage, which is the part of business I really loved. But yeah, I pretty much built it from the ground up, and had his support during that, which I'm so grateful for. But, learning how to drive a dump truck when you're a former ballerina is a little bit like, what in the hell am I doing? But you do things, right? You do things because you're in a certain partnership and you want to be there for that person, right? And it was just kind of like the easiest path of resistance. And I liked business, right? I liked learning how to do government contracting. I liked the back end side of the business. I liked organizing QuickBooks. I liked, going and shaking hands, the deal, right? I like the deal. But the part about owning a dump truck company that is soul crushing for me is the fact that when you are the owner, you have to show up when people don't show up. And so it's not always easy when you're like, oh, I guess it's Saturday, and instead of doing X, Y, and Z, I got to go drive a dump truck because so-and-so didn't show up. And so I think when you're doing entrepreneurship, that's why it's so important for you to really love the work that you do, because if your bookkeeper quits, if your sales guy, drops the ball, if your, on the ground person doesn't show up, you got to fill in all those gaps, and you got to understand all the parts of your business. And, it's not that you have to like all the parts, but if you can't fill in the gaps every now and again, you're going to have a much harder time being successful, because you're going to have that like internal discord, right? And so that's why I say, I'm building this company back up so that I can offload it, because it's really not my passion. It's not, I'm good at it, right? I can do it, but it's not what lights me up and gets me excited to jump out of bed. And so I think in entrepreneurship, it's so important for people to understand why they're doing. I love the book Start With Why by Simone Sick, because it's all about, if you can connect to your why, you can overcome anything. And so, for me, the why of this dump truck is very different now than it was then, because obviously I'm getting a divorce. So this olive branch company that was part of a bigger family picture is very different than what it was. And so coming back to your why and being able to say, no, this is what I'm doing because it's what I'm meant to do, because it lights me up. It's going to make your entrepreneurial journey a lot better.
You have this breaking point of where you're kind of being pulled, and what was kind of let's take a little snapshot of that to kind of let everyone know what that looked like when you were like, all right, wait a minute, the masking tape fell off, right? What was that breaking point for you when you got going?
Are you talking about like specifically with the trucking business, or?
Yeah, like in your 5 years ago,
Yeah.
your note to me was like, hey, 5 years ago I was a
Yeah.
basket case of fun. It's the best way I could sum it up. But
It's
it's like read,
perfect.
because
Yeah.
here's what. Listen, this is total me. When I read, I put myself as if I'm watching the you and the things,
Yeah.
and and then I'll insert myself in as a character somewhere so I can feel the story. So I was like, this is just chaos like I'm used to.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think, I am a multi-passionate human and multifaceted, and I kind of have that personality type where I can do a lot of different things, and it doesn't necessarily make sense how I know how to do them. I just have always been that way, right? And so 5 years ago, I was just trying to be all these different things and all these different people. And like I said, I could do it, but I was internally so unsatisfied because I didn't really know who I was. It was kind of like that chronic people pleasing, which again goes back to like women, historically have been conditioned to be the good wife, be the good daughter, don't rock the boat, kind of like fill in all the gaps and take care of everyone else. And so I just neglected who I was. And so 5 years ago, when I couldn't get out of bed because I didn't feel satisfied or happy, it was a moment where I could get curious about, well, wait, why am I not happy? What am I doing that's not fulfilling me? And so I just kind of went on that rabbit hole of self-discovery, really drawing my awareness to the things that were making me feel awesome and got me excited about living, and then the things that didn't feel good, and becoming more honest with, okay, why did I do these things? Who was that for? And it's, it's been a freaking roller coaster ride of a journey to go down that discovery and be like, wow, I did a lot of things because I was trying to appease someone else's life, and I totally stopped living for myself. And that's why I think my coaching is so powerful, because it's not that I just went and got my ICF certification and read all these books and like, hired my own coach. It's that I literally was on my knees trying to re-identify who am I, which I think is the telling question. And the more curious I got, the more I transformed, and the more I became who I'm supposed to be, which is the woman I am now, thankfully. And I think that you're always on a journey of becoming, especially if you are a leader and a coach. It never ends. I keep thinking like, okay, if I just get over this next little thing that I'm going through, then I will have arrived. And then, you sit pretty for like 2 seconds, and then boom, the universe brings another thing, and you're like, here we go again,
Yeah.
So it's just never evolving, or never ending.
Where does the survival mode come from? Sorry, because you had, listen, let me tee you up here. So that's me. Like I had to stay busy all the time. My mind, if I was helping someone else, I would, and it took me, you're talking recently for the word survival mode to register with me and click. And I was like, wait a minute, I heard that years ago. Like, Jeff, you're survival mode. I'm like, you can stick it in your ear. You don't know what you're talking about, whatever. But finally, it was like a moment when I was like, this is exactly why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Is that something that you were able to get to figure out, and what was creating that tendency?
I think it was a deep desire to be this good girl. And, I grew up, my mom was a pastor, so I grew up in a very religious, home where you do everything in the order of operations. And so I was just living based on the way I was raised and the conditions. And for me, it was the opportunity of like, wait a minute, this could be different. And what does different look like? And it means slamming on the brakes, getting out of the car, and being like, where am I? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? Like, instead of driving unconsciously and doing the day to day, it's like I just stopped and started to get curious. Why am I doing this? Why do I eat this? Why do I work out here? Why do I live here? Why am I having these conversations with these people? Like, I just asked why in every area of my life. Why are you doing this? Who are you doing this for? And then I sat with myself a lot. One of the major ways that I broke my tendencies was I went on a 10-day silent retreat, and I sat by myself. And you don't talk to anybody, you meditate for hours a day, you eat on a very restricted diet, you're sleeping, there's no technology, no nothing. And so that time allowed me to really discover who I was. And
That's really good. That's a super powerful moment there.
Yeah.
And what we speak to there, Karissa, is we're talking about mom. As we're recording this, we're a day removed from Mother's Day, and your mom's a pastor, and so there's that upbringing along the same lines of the household. It's your mom, all these things, and I've had boundaries. Me and my mom put some boundaries in place, and now we're in a way better place. Is that something you guys have been able to find some common ground on?
Yeah, definitely. Early in my early in my personal development journey, I was like, cut it off completely, right? Like, I can never talk to you again. And I think you have to do that sometimes, depending on the level of toxicity and the level of, how genuine you can be with yourself, how well the relationship is. But for me, I had to cut it off and then really ground in who I was and how I wanted to show up in the world. And once I had the personal identity kind of discovered, then I kind of opened the door, and I was like, hey, this is who I am. Is this someone that you can be around? Can we jive? And I would say it's never perfect. I don't think it ever will be.
Yeah.
But
they're their own person too. They're their own
exactly.
too. Yeah.
but there's a mutual respect, and I think it's like you get to that point where you can agree to disagree, and you learn to respect each other and value each other. And I would say, you know, as I'm like going through this crazy, you know, transition, getting a divorce and all these things, nobody has shown up for me more than my mom. And I would not have expected that. But that's like the power of dropping your ego and identifying with, well, this is who I am. I still love you. You're still my mom. And for her to drop her ego and be like, well, you're my daughter. I still love you for who you are, kind of a thing. And you find different ways of seeing each other the moment you get out of your own way, right? And change your perspective a little bit.
Yeah, me same was I had to I had to help my mom, and I hope she has just release some shame and just different stuff, right? It doesn't matter anymore, and so that's what was a lot of our common ground. We're butting heads about just we're both trying to get to the same place, but I didn't. My mom shielded a lot of things from me, and still does. And but I realize now, 'cause she was a single mom, young mom, high school, well, pregnancy and all that stuff. And then so she had it like I was hard. It was hard for me, but man, I had a great life. But
Yeah.
now I have way better respect and perspective for how freaking hard it was on her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that was part of us because I just young Jeff and didn't understand that. I didn't process selfish Jeff, bitter Jeff, didn't process that the way that I should have, and then podcasting helped me find that perspective, and just talking with different people and sharing my story, listening to yours, and just saying, well, we got some common ground here, and then just kind of some dialogue back and forth. And I had a couple podcast guests give me some like some real side, like, Jeff, hold on here, man. This is what we're here. This is what I feel. This is what I hear. And I was like, oh man. And so I got a book of notes from one of my guests on. She's like, do this. Think about this, and it really helped me turn a corner.
Yeah.
So that whole Second Chance podcast I did was dead. It was like after I found this piece, I was like, all right, I need to move on to something else. Let's find a new thing. You mentioned something, and I wanted to point out this divorce is not an old divorce. This is something you're dealing with now.
Yeah. Brand new.
Brand-
2025. Yeah. Like let's just open that cat of bag of worms, I guess.
yeah, because no, but listen, I throw that in there for that entrepreneur is, you know, that doesn't have that's not a factor that keeps you from showing up in your businesses.
No.
And
Yeah.
right, it's something else that you have to deal with, and it's even a little more convoluted because it's maybe a common business, or you guys are um there's some shared stuff. So I don't know the role he played inside the dump truck business or the home, but there's some strain or some potentials that could be there. So you're even having to triple communicate when you normally would just be able to brush through things, man.
Yeah. Well, and you know, the thing is I wouldn't be the woman I am today without my ex-husband. And I have a lot of appreciation for him. He is a very, very skilled entrepreneur. And I learned a lot from him. Unfortunately, I think just like in business, in entrepreneurship, in life, you can go different ways, right? So it's not that anything terrible happened. It's just we're going two different ways. And, you know, at some point you wake up and you're like, well, wait a minute, who's this person that I'm sleeping next to? And so I think really it's the opportunity for us all to just sit back and really make sure that what we're doing is the right thing for us, because I think we stay in situations that we're not meant to be in just because, right? Because we've always done it that way, because it's what we understand, you know, because X, Y, and Z. And so I just got to a point, you know, I mean, it's one of those slow killers, right? And so it's just, I got to a point where I was like, well, wait a minute, why? Right? That get curious. I use that all the time in my coaching business. How can you get curious? How can you get curious? And so I just got curious about, well, why am I in this marriage? You know, what is happening here? And I think the answers are very clear now, and it's not for the faint of heart, but it's allowed me a lot of compassion. I've led a lot of women through divorce before, so it's giving me a unique perspective on the issue. And I think men are underrepresented in their relationships as well. You know, it wasn't just me that was unhappy, it was him that was unhappy. But again, you stay in situations because they're known, not necessarily because they're the right place for you. So I think it's just permission for people to reevaluate. Is this the right job for me? Is this the right partnership? Am I living where I will actually want to be? You know, when you look back, is this all what you really want? Or are you just doing it because it's what you know?
Nah, that's a big deal. Like, you know, and I think this is the first time. I mean, I've talked to Aftermath. Like, we always have a story of coulda, woulda, shouldas, and but not right in the middle of trying to run a business and balance a daughter and all the things that comes with that. And that, folks, is just a part of being an entrepreneur.
Yep.
That's the ultimate get up and show up on some of the days when you don't feel like getting out of bed. Um,
Yep.
you you have you have this no BS approach to personal growth. Um, and why do you think so many people get stuck in this self help cycle?
Um, it's a really interesting thing that you bring up, Jeff, because I think in the personal development world, some of the blinders are coming off. You know, COVID brought a lot of people online. It brought a lot of this like awakening and spiritual Yahoo stuff. And I think people get stuck in the idealism and not the truth or the reality. There's a lot of people online doing a lot of really amazing coaching work, but there's also a lot of people out there who are just posting pictures of Range Rovers, making it look like this, you know, really easy, beautiful thing. And so my approach is there is no blinders. This is messy and it's real and it's raw. And you know, when I decided 6 months ago that I really was unhappy in my marriage and I needed to do something about it, I had that moment of like, how can I be a coach and be going through this terrible, you know, life transition? But the reality is none of us are immune from life happening. And so part of my practice is to put it out there for people. And no, I don't share every nitty gritty detail. It's not everybody's business, but I do believe that I'm here to share authentically because it's not always easy to be an entrepreneur. It's definitely not easy to be a successful, you know, coach. And I think people get stuck because it looks good, but they're bypassing the ability to go deep and really know themselves. And what I will say is the moment I did decide to separate and left, this layer of peace and groundedness that I dropped into was a level that I never, ever thought was obtainable. And so I think you can get stuck in the pretty lights, or you can turn off all the lights and really go deeper and sit with yourself. And that's when you discover who you are and the real purpose of your life.
That's very authentic, right? And it's some people you could use the word raw there, but it's not a lot of smoke and mirrors. And that's what I try to tell people. I'm like, it's not. There's there's so much noise. I've worked with some folks that have scheduled with me that are like, I'm going to be a coach. I'm going to do this, and they're super young. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. My son is 15. He got asked to coach a younger kid the other day that needs some guidance, and so there's always room for that. But it's hard to go in and coach entrepreneurs without having a little bit of experience, a little
Yeah.
bit of making some payroll, a little bit of understand what it's like when truck drivers who they're used to riding around a truck and not talking to anyone. So
Yeah.
engaging with truck drivers, and being able to share those different experiences and just a little bit of OJT, I think, goes a little bit of life. It's
Yeah.
hard to life coach. It's not really life coaching. It's like you said, we try to use the term personal development, but it's nice to have the person. I equate it to this. You hear me talk about this sometimes. Is I always struggle with. There was like Jeff years ago. They're like, you should talk to a counselor, and I go, find me someone who's been where I've been at. Turns
Right.
out that's me, right? I'm the only person who's been where I've been at. So now I get to share. I enjoy just sitting down and, like you said, not go. You might not get all the details, but I tell you what, if it's the right conversation, I'm pretty much open book on a lot of shortcomings, and
Definitely.
especially if it's something that I know is like, hey, you think you're in the bad. This is where I was, right? I was way over here.
Yeah.
Um, but it's all about the right thing. And I never want to use the I want my story to overshadow yours type thing, but I think sometimes it's just is the relatable experience that you have is irreplaceable when it comes to what you do, man.
Yeah.
How tell me this as we wrap up. How can folks get in touch with you? And let's start it right here. Who's kind of an ideal client that you like to work with? And then how can folks get in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, my clients are, in a vast array of industries. I work with mostly entrepreneurs and executives. And they're regular women who are out there trying to juggle it all, trying to figure it out. And they want to do it in a more harmonious way. They're already successful. They're already crushing it in one or more areas of their life. They just feel like maybe there's a better way. And that's the beauty of the work that I do is they don't need me, but they want to do something a little bit differently. They want to do it a little bit better. They want to have a bit more ease. And so the women who come to me, are they're ready to go. They're motivated and self-driven. So, if that speaks to anyone in your audience, they can go to my Instagram, which is Coach Karissa Dean, or they could go to my website, carissadean.com. I'm just a little DM or email or text or phone call away. And, one of the things too that I think is interesting that you brought up, you get a lot of these younger people who see all these online coaches and it looks like they're doing really well. But it's not always this, giant purpose, right? And what I'm trying to build is something that is approachable for the average Joe, right? It's not a $1 million investment. I think coaching can transform multiple areas of your life if you're willing to take the time, energy, and financial investment into it. And so I try to be a soft landing spot for people who are ready for change, but realistic about the fact that it needs to be sustainable, right? You can't just come in and be like, well, you're not working on Mondays and you're going to go glitter yourself for the whole day. Like that's not realistic, right? So
Yep.
trying to help people who are in the real world and build something that's sustainable, that they can have a few sessions with me and then boom, they're out in the world rocking it.
Now, I think I think you can solve a lot of problems. And I hope that people take advantage of this because I enjoy amplifying messages like yours and helping people, connect with you and find their way in you. Because I deal with the other side of it a lot of times we're selling our business or we're failing or we're all the things that are very preventable if you get with the right people earlier on. I can't thank you enough, man, for being here, for hanging out with me, let me get to know you, and for like I tell a lot of the guests that come on my show, is for being a hope dealer and spreading your message and using every setback that you ever had as a little bit of fuel to be the light. And
Yeah.
it's a big deal for the illuminators of the world to be able to help folks find their own light. So I can't thank you enough for letting me get to know you and my audience as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Jeff. I appreciate the work that you're doing too, because I think men are underrepresented. And so it's always a pleasure to meet with male coaches who are out there doing the work as well, because more healed men make more healed women, and it just goes round and round.
Yeah. I think my old podcast, I called it Breaking the Curse. And I was like, no, it's not really breaking a curse. So I had that same thing. So people gave me some advice. And I was like, it's not breaking a curse. It's finding your purpose.
Yeah,
And that, after I really realized that, and then helping other people kind of find their purpose in their days is more so what we're doing, and spreading a lot of hope along the way.
exactly.
All right, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, have a great one. Thanks, Jeff.